Good evening and welcome to the November 2, 2022 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. I'm Mayor Nathan Box. I would like to call this meeting to order. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd.
Present.
Vreeman.
Present.
Peters.
Here.
Corbin. Here. Coronado.
Present.
Arnshorst.
Here.
Hoekstra.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
Mayor Box.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to begin this evening as we have for many years, first with an opening prayer, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would ask that you would join us if you're so inclined. Please join me in prayer if you're inclined. Lord, thank you for another wonderful day. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the warm air. Thank you for the hope of another spring that's to come, hopefully sooner rather than later. Lord, thank you for entrusting us with doing the work of the people of the city of Holland. Give us eyes to see, ears to listen, and brains to discern to do what is best for the people of Holland. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next item, item 4, are our consent agenda items. These items are considered to be fairly routine, and they have been reviewed by council members as part of our council packet, and they will be enacted in one motion unless a member of the public or a member of council asks to have an item removed from the consent agenda and then placed in its regular order on the regular agenda. But prior to my asking that, Kathy, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
4B, approval of minutes, October 19, 2022 regular meeting and October 26, 2022 study session. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, written petitions, communications, tax abatement, PA 198, NIDIT LLC, 105 Veterans Drive. 4E, approve Michigan Department of Transportation trunk line maintenance agreement. 4F, approve temporary right of entry agreement with CSX Transportation. 4G, set public hearing for PA 198 tax abatement for power manufacturing, November 16, 2022. 4H, annual adjustments of interest rates for certain special assessments. 4I, place delinquent ordinance violation invoices on winter 2022 property tax bills. Adopt resolution. 4J, quarterly investment report, accept as information. 4K, set public hearing for PA 198 tax abatement for NIDIT LLC, November 16, 2022. 4L, broker dealer requests for qualifications. 4M, award replacement computer equipment bid. 4N, 2023 schedule of meetings of the City of Holland City Council. 4O, revocable license agreement, 20 East 8th Street. 4P, award bid in the amount of $37,500 for gutter lining at City Hall. 4Q, declare surplus property, 345 Collin Park Drive. Adopt resolution, schedule public hearing for December 7, 2022.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Is there any member of the public that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none, is there any member of council that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Mr. Byrd?
Yes, 4H, please, finance.
All right, that will then be placed at 12E 4.2 on the regular agenda. Is there anyone else that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on regular? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of council in regard to the amended consent agenda?
Will we approve as presented, or amended, excuse me?
Moved by Hoekstra, is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado, any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd.
Yes.
Vreeman.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Corbin.
Yes.
Coronado.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act of the State of Michigan, in all of our public meetings, both our regular meetings and our study sessions, we provide the public the opportunity to address council. You are allowed to address council just one time during this meeting. You can speak about any subject that you would like to, but please remember that this is one-way communication. This is the opportunity for you to speak to us. We don't engage in discussion or answer questions at this point, but it gives you the opportunity to let us know what you think is important. You have 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. The green light means you're doing well on time. The yellow light means you have 1 minute left, and the red light means that your time has expired, and we are strict about that and ask that you abide by that. Now, having said that, when you approach the microphone, please state your name for the record and the municipality in which you live. Is there anyone here who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zealand. It is my pleasure again to stand for our religious freedoms and freedom of speech. And so tonight I would like to invite you, City Council, to this weekend. It will begin at 6 o'clock at the Civic Center and end at 6 o'clock. It's an all-night prayer. And I'm just kind of the voice for this. It's moms in prayer that are moms that every day gather and pray for their children in school and city and safety and et cetera, et cetera. So in prayer, what happened was they understood it would be a good thing for them to rent the Civic Center and have a 24-hour prayer. And so that's exactly what's taking place. It's called the Breakthrough24.com, and you can go there to find out more about it. They will be praying specifically for the government at 9 to 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. So I would like to invite all of you to come. I have invitations here that if you want to distribute them to anybody else, you're welcome to do that as well. It is a beautiful thing for the people of Holland to gather together to pray. So please make sure you make it.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on our agenda, special presentations and recognitions from the mayor or council or city manager. Presentation of the accreditation certificate to the Holland Police Department team by the Michigan Associations of Chiefs of Police. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you. And you see, we don't see this very often anymore. A row of 5 good-looking men in suits sitting there. And I'm not going to pull too many give you too much information at this point because they're here to really celebrate an amazing accomplishment by our department. And the executive director of the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, Robert Stevenson, is here, and he's going to kick us off. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city officials, and most importantly, the citizens of Holland. My name is Robert Stevenson. I'm currently the executive director with the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, and I've held this position for 11 years now, and prior to that, I spent 37 years in the police profession over on the east side of the state at a town called Livonia, which is where I reside now, over by there. And I'm here tonight in representation from the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission to award the Certificate of Accreditation to the Holland Department of Public Safety. It is quite an accomplishment, and I think that you probably all know that you have a good police department. I'm sure you're very proud of your police department. I get all around the state in the 11 years that I've had this job, and I see many different police departments, and I can tell you your police department has an excellent reputation. But having gone through this program, I can tell you that your police department is a better police department now than it was before. I often say you don't have to be sick to get better, and that's certainly true for our profession. I think everybody recognizes that the last few years have been very difficult for law enforcement. There have been a lot of calls for so-called police reform, but I'm here to tell you and your public that every single one of those reforms that were called for around the country, your police department had already done. And they did this and started this process before those calls came about. They had already voluntarily entered into this process. I think sometimes it's difficult for me to explain how difficult this was and what an accomplishment it is. So I'll just put it this way. In the state of Michigan, there's 589 or so police agencies on any given day. Out of those police agencies, 400 of those are municipal agencies, 300 of them are sheriffs, and the rest are made up from colleges, universities, and such. Out of all the police departments in the state of Michigan, yours is the 50th to accomplish this. Or to put it a different way, your police department has been able to accomplish what over 90% of the other police agencies in this state have yet to accomplish. We're very proud of them. They're leaders in our profession. They're elevating our profession, and hopefully you're as proud of them as we are. And for me to just say we're here to award the accreditation, we don't give it out, but I'd like to introduce, if I could, our accreditation program manager, retired Chief Ron Wiles, to just explain a little bit about what they had to go through to earn this accreditation.
Absolutely.
With that, Chief?
Please.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It is certainly my pleasure to be here on a day like today and honor your wonderful police department. Accreditation is a time-proven way to help law enforcement agencies get better. In other words, it takes a good police department like you knew you had and gives them the opportunity to be great, which I know they'll take full advantage of. The foundation of the program lies in the voluntary compliance of 108 best practice standards in the law enforcement profession. And as been mentioned already, it is something that not everyone can do or wants to do, but your law enforcement agency took it upon themselves to do that, so they should be commended for that. So this process, we just kicks off with what we call a self-analysis period. And that's up to a 2-year period for agencies to get their P's and Q's in line, to be in compliance with those 108 standards. Now, it's one thing to say that you're doing it, but they also have to show proofs that they're doing it. So during that 2-year process, they may have what we call a mock assessment, which is like a dry run. We bring outside people in to assess how they're doing, answer questions, make sure they're on the right track. And when they think they're ready, we bring in 2 outside assessors to the police department, and they review everything within that police department to make sure they're in compliance with those 108 standards. As was mentioned, these aren't given out. These are earned, and your police department did a wonderful job in attaining that. But I want to make sure everyone's very clear that this isn't a one and done. After they receive this accreditation award for this time, in 3 years we're going to be back. We're going to make sure that they're still doing what they're supposed to be doing in compliance with their program and those 108 standards. The original accreditation is a promise made. The re-accreditation, which will happen in 3 years, is a promise kept. Kept to you, kept to their officers at the department, and certainly kept to the residents of the city of Holland. So you should be very proud of them. I know we are with the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. Again, thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce our current president of the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, Larry Weeks from the city of Eaton Rapids.
Great. Thank you. And welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I always say they get all the heavy lifting and I get all the glory to come up and actually present the award. So before I do that, though, I just want to take a real quick second to acknowledge you folks as council. As the director noted, it's been a challenging couple of years for law enforcement, and really nothing happens in a law enforcement agency without a council's support. So it's really your support that makes this allowable for the chief and the department to continue to move this forward and make it happen. So please don't underestimate the importance of your support in your local agency, from the chief all the way down to the front lines. So thank you for that. Chief, if
Great,
you guys
thank
want to
you.
come up. To all who see this certificate, know that the Holland Department of Public Safety, having voluntarily complied with the standards established by the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission, deemed essential for the delivery of professional police services and the protection of their community, is hereby awarded this certificate of accreditation effective as of this first day of October in the year 2022 for the term of 3 years. Congratulations, Chief. Thank you. Put on for the community, too. Thanks.
just want to take a quick second to talk about the process. I can tell these guys are all chiefs, retired chiefs. We apparently should compared notes before we started because they talked about everything that I was going to talk about. So I can kind of scratch about 3 or 4 things off my list. The standards, number of police. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you left me with a lot. But anyway, I just want to say, first of all, thanks to Bob Stevenson, Ron Wiles, also Larry Weeks. These guys, I tell you, they work tireless. This is one little small portion of what they do. I've been working with these guys for several years now. They go all over the state. They promote police professionalism all over the state. They do a wonderful job. They're from the east side, as you heard, so we want to welcome them to the west side. They don't get over here very much. So guys, welcome to the west side and welcome to Holland. Yes, they're going to stay. We're going to give them a tour of the downtown after the meeting tonight, so we'll show them around down there. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process and give credit where credit's due, and it's definitely not for me. Credit is due by this gentleman right here, Captain Keith Mulder, and the team that he assembled to make this happen. I started looking to this in 2018. I think many of you know, you've seen it on your screens in the budget process. I went to Lansing, I came back, I went back in 2019. And you guys don't know Bob very well, but Bob has a way of kind of subtly reminding you of things that you should probably do that you're not doing. And Bob reminded me that several times that we should be going through this process. So we traveled to Lansing, myself, Keith Mulder, and Bob Bursma back in 2020. And I remember the drive back from Lansing. And there was a lot of conversation, a lot of debate. And I think it took us to about Grand Rapids area. And the magic words came out of somebody's mouth that I was waiting to hear when Captain Keith Mulder says, well, we're going to do it. I'll be the accreditation manager. That's all we needed to hear. We're going to go for this, right? We are going to do this. And to be honest with you, I thought, these guys were telling me it's going to be a 2-year process, right? No, we met. We had a little meeting after that. It says, no, we're going to make this a 1-year process. Remember that meeting? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, I tell you, after about 4 months, I realized that I had no idea what I was talking about. This was not a 1-year process, trust me. And these guys hit on it very well. We had to provide over 470 proofs to meet these 108 standards, and it was no small feat, let me tell you. And we kind of carved out Tuesday morning, 3-4 hour meetings. That's all the time we had to meet, and we met every Tuesday. And I'm telling you, this gentleman right here put a ton of work into it. I'm getting policy emails like 10 at 9, 10 o'clock at night that he's going through this. And we're reviewing them over email at all hours of the night, in the morning. The guy put a ton of work into this. So I just want to say thank you for all the time and effort, because all of it, starts with you. But it was a huge team effort. We had some other people there, the Scott Doza, Lori Boovy, Bob Bursma. There was 7 or 8 individuals that were really part of this team. And we couldn't have done it without them. But this guy was the lead. There's no question about it. But we are proud to be one of those. I think there's now a total of 57 certified accredited agencies. So 57 accredited. We're one of those out of 589 in the state. So we're very proud of that. And Bob hit on it already. I was gonna close with this, but I'll say it again. We are a better department now than we were 2 years ago. And we all stand for that. It's the continuous pursuit of excellence. That's what we do. And we are better today than we were 2 years ago, and we hope to be better 2 years from now than we are today. So thank all of you for your support. Thank you, Keith, and thank you for the time in front of you tonight.
Great, thank you. Hold that spot a minute, because I have a feeling a council member or two might have a comment. I'm just guessing. If not, I know I do. First of all, I want to thank you guys for going through this process. You know that we stand behind you and do everything that we can do to make sure that you guys get the support that you need. But you guys are the ones that are out there doing the work every day and going above and beyond, not just with this, but with other things as well. Am I correct in remembering that when the 2 gentlemen came in to do the accreditation process, did I sit down with the 2 gentlemen I sat down with at the interview?
Yes.
They loved this town. They were impressed with this town. They didn't want to leave this town, just like the guy sitting behind you going, we're going to stay, we're going to stick around. They're impressed not only with the department, but with the community and the way that your department is a showcase for the community, an opportunity for people to see the community through your eyes. So thank you for the hard work. Congratulations. It's definitely something that was earned not only over the course of the last 2 years, but earned for years and years of dedicated service, and we couldn't be more proud of it. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you guys to stay seated for a second. So. They're going to comment a minute. Yeah. So, I didn't yell loud enough. That's all. This is a really big deal. I've always touted Holland as one of the golden nuggets of Michigan, and if not the United States. Our police department is head and shoulders above the majority of them. You said 589 organizations here in Michigan, and 51, 57, was it? 50th. And that doesn't surprise me. In Holland, we have a knack for being first in a sense. We lead the way in a lot of different things. While you're here, I'm sure you've heard about the heated sidewalks. That there is something that at one time we had Canada calling us, trying to get information about that. We lead the way in a lot of different things. Interiors for automobiles, a lot of that was derived from Holland, Michigan. We have a lot of dreamers here, but we don't have just a lot of dreamers, we have a lot of doers here. And what our police department has done is stepped into that doing. And Holland has had levels of growth. Where we are today, it's not by just the people in this room. It's from people whose shoulders we stand on. And our police department, even though these gentlemen are here, they're standing on shoulders of the people who were in front of them, who started and paved that way for the excellence, the continued pursuit of excellence that we have. Self-evaluation is huge. This whole process starts with self-evaluation. If you don't self-evaluate, you don't ever start this. And in that process of self-evaluation, you have the ability to hold yourself accountable. But to have someone else hold you accountable, that speaks volumes. To have someone come into your organization and scrutinize this voluntarily and say, hey, you're doing good here, but you need to improve here, you need to improve there. How many of us do that in our personal life, right? It's kind of hands off. And so when you have the leader of an organization saying, come in, scrutinize us so we can improve, that speaks volumes. That speaks big volumes to that organization and to the leadership of that organization. So you guys have shown the ability to continue to invest in the organization and the individuals who are part of that organization. So I'm pretty ecstatic about this. This isn't just one of those things, hey, we got an award, yay, right? This is something this is a big deal. We had the brain doctor come in some years ago, and I've always told Chief Messer, you're going to be the poster child. And he is the poster child. Our organization is the poster child. And this right here is just another example, again, I'm repeating myself, of this organization being the poster child. So congratulations, well deserved.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Quincy. Yes, anyone else? Excellent, wonderful. Congratulations again.
Thank you. All right, you guys can thank you. Councilman says sit, we said. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Great words.
Yep. Next item on our agenda is item number 9, written petitions and communications. In addition to providing the public the opportunity to speak to us in person during our meetings, we also have an email address specifically designed for that purpose, publiccomment@cityofholland.com. That's publiccomment@cityofholland.com. We receive those emails in between our regular meetings and then accept them into the record at our regular meetings. We don't read them out loud, but we do make them part of the record, and my understanding is we do not have any this evening, but we just want to make sure people knew that that option was out there and available to them. Next item is item 10, adoption of ordinances. 10A, text amendment to Chapter 17, licenses generally. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, this is the part of the meeting I know you've all been looking forward to. Maybe. Tricia, why don't you come on up here? I think Tricia's got 2 and Steve's got 1. And thank you so much to all of you in advance for really kind of on the heels of what we just looked at, that we're always looking at our stuff. We're always finding ways to improve it. And here's the first text amendment to improve Chapter 17, licenses generally. Take it away, Tricia.
Yes, thank you. And I think I have a very brief.
You might have to turn it on first. I'll be your clicker. You just say next, please.
This one's good. So thanks for having me. This is Chapter 17. This one is really easy. We want to make sure that the titles in Chapter 17 that explain what licenses are required match the section that they go with. So this one is super easy. So we're updating number 11. City Council already approved the amendment to add shelters to Chapter 26. In Chapter 20, as I was going through, or number 20, as I was going through this list, Chapter 24 is actually called taxi cabs and buses. And I figured if we were already in here, we might as well make sure everything matches. And then number 5 is a brand new one, which is the next item on the agenda for vendor trucks in Chapter 24 and 39. So these amendments in Chapter 17 are just making sure that the list in Chapter 17 matches the title of each individual section within the ordinance code.
So I have you guys are wonderful in taking care of the details. I have a very detail-oriented question, and that is, can we add item 25 for Chapter 24 before we do item 2? I guess I'm doing that with Ron. If we don't,
Good question.
If we haven't already done the text amendment to Chapter 24, should we be adding it to the list of text that we have on here? As long as we're being this nitpicky about things, I might as well ask that question.
Yeah, I suppose technically the next item should be done first, so you might want to postpone voting on this one.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure it really makes a difference.
We don't have a motion on the floor. I'll tell you what, I have a suggestion. Why don't we have you explain to us item 10B, and then we can vote on 10B, and then we'll come back to 10A.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have a motion or anything on the floor yet, so, yep,
Right.
all right.
Great. Good thing mine are back to back. All right. 10B, vendor trucks. You may have noticed they're a thing now. People get really excited about food trucks. They want them at their events. Businesses call them in for special events for their employees or their customers. So Kathy Grimm in the clerk's office did a lot of research on her end to find out what other communities are doing with vendor trucks and food trucks. And we think that we would like to expand our regulations a little bit to encourage more food trucks in the city of Holland, since that seems to be a fairly popular request. So Chapter 24 is brand new. So what this does is it sets the standard for what we want to see when licensing a vendor truck. So we called it vendor truck so that we can align with Chapter 39 and UDO, because vendor truck was already an established term within that ordinance. So we're going to carry it through. So it does encompass food trucks, but it could also encompass other types of vendor style sales. We've had a couple of trucks selling tennis shoes. We've had trucks selling flowers. We've had trucks selling blankets or other clothing items. So we thought the vendor truck as a broad form, it could even be farmer's market style, farm to table type of goods. So chapter 24 talks all about the regulation, and how we're gonna regulate them, what type of information we would like to gather from those folks. We've got a definition for what a vendor truck is. The definition is identical in this chapter to the same definition in Udo in chapter 39. We wanted those to match. And then we have the specific licenses. This will be a new license from the city clerk's office. You'll see the fee come across in the fee schedule when we get to those changes in January. And then anybody operating a vendor truck in the city of Holland will need a license from the clerk's office. Our department and Udo will still do the zoning and where they're allowed to make sure that they're in commercial districts. But then also we'll watch for use of city facilities and parks and events and all of that other fun detail stuff. So chapter 24 is just the regulation that talks about you need a license. We want you to tell us your name, where you're gonna operate, who is the owner, and then you can't create, surprise, you can't create nuisances. There are some areas you're not allowed in. So this just sets the standard for what the requirements are.
Excellent. Great. Questions for staff in regard to item 10B, the licenses for vendor trucks? Great. Thank you very much. Why don't you stick around, because I bet we're going to have another one with you in just a moment. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 10B, text amendment to chapter 24, licenses for vendor trucks?
Move to approve.
Moved by Byrd. Is there support? Support by Coronado. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Bremen.
Yes.
Peters. Yes. Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. And I apologize for that question and reordering and bringing it up right now. I just thought of it just as you were walking up here. But now that we have vendor trucks, should we add that to the list of things that we have in our title page? I think is what it is, correct?
That would be great.
Okay. You don't have anything? Do you have anything else to add?
I don't.
All right. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 10A, licenses generally? Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters. Yes. Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Bremen.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Tricia. Next item is item 10C, text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, number 6, not in Roman numerals this time. This is round 6.
Round 6. We've made it to round 6. We actually have round 7 in the hopper, so
Yes.
I know you'll be excited for that. So try to keep, especially this one, brief, but we've got a list of amendments for you tonight. The way they're listed on the agenda are really the more substantive changes, and then at the end is some of the maybe just more normal corrections that we've been doing. So with that in mind, the order that we started with was the airport overlay zone. So this is just that map of that of the zoning district with the airport overlay shown on there. The changes in UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, that we want to make with this is really just to create some flexibility with the airport overlay that would allow, if the airport were to sign off on maybe other uses or some other item that wouldn't normally be permitted. I think the example that we gave last time was there are some height limitations in the overlay zoning district that are different from the underlying zoning. So if the airport were to find that it would be not inconsistent with their airport layout plan to approve something like that, they would let us know, and then we would be able to have a project go through what I guess I'll call the normal site plan approval process. I think the other example we used is that there could be a use that that wouldn't normally be permitted in that overlay that the underlying zoning would permit, that the airport may be able to sign off of. So again, it's the idea of just creating this flexibility, a few more options out there. I think what we're going to find is when you look at that overlay map, on the edges and on sort of the perimeter of all of those the cross-hatched areas that you're looking at, that there could be opportunities for some of these flexibility options to occur. So that is the First Amendment that you've got in your packet. I know you see some red and some blue on there. Some of those changes that we came up with were really edits to our own edits. So that's really what you're looking at in regards to the airport overlay changes. The next one is the vendor trucks. So you were just talking about that. And we want to make some changes in Udo for that. Sorry, next page. So we have a definition that we're adding for vendor truck. As Tricia mentioned, it's the same definition that you just put in chapter 24. A clarification of including the educational district in those zoning districts where it's permitted. That's already allowed, so that's really just a correction. The slight increase of allowing some special events up to 6 a year for those zoning districts where those trucks are already permitted. And then in terms of on public property, rather than run everything through the city manager's office, those other departments, Windmill, Island Gardens, Civic Center, Farmers Market, that you would be able to get approval through those department directors. And then the last item, again, something that you just talked about, the requirement for the license, the annual license for the vendor truck. So those would be the changes in Udo for vendor truck. The next change is what we're calling elevated bridges. On the right side of your screen is the LG site plan. This is the change that would allow for the catwalk that would cross a property line. So really what this change does is allows for this little equipment corridor to cross over a property line, to not require a setback through there. This was something that we knew we needed to address when we approved the LG site, and I just highlighted for you there the location of where that property line bisects that property and where they have a couple of these equipment corridors that cross the property line.
Steve, just for clarification, this is only allowed if the same owner owns both parcels, correct?
Same owner owns both parcels, and it's a non-residential use.
Okay, and it's relatively unique to this site because of a previous, is it a tax abatement or something in regard to one of these parcels that it needed to be kept separately? Normally, a property owner, those two parcels would be merged and this wouldn't be an issue, right?
Yeah, normally that would have been one parcel, but with the Renaissance zone that was created as a result of the LG project, it really needed its own separate property. So there's a property line that runs through there that we did have to deal with. This was really something, again, that we had identified when LG was going through for the site plan approval process that we were going to have to address.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out for the public. It's really uncommon that this would come up, but not necessarily unique to this particular property. It could happen with other parcels in the future. So
Right.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
And I think, well, I don't think this is the last substantive change, but accessory structures. So this is in the section of non-conforming uses. So with the development of Udo, one of the things that we found is that we had, which isn't a surprise, you rewrite the whole code, you're going to come up with some non-conforming situations. What we found was that there are situations where you have a residential use, in particular in some of the form-based code districts, where maybe a single-family residential use is now a non-conforming situation. So what this change does would allow for those types of situations to be able to have some of these accessory structures like a shed, a garage, or a fence So again, I know the idea is with non-conforming situations that you would want those to expire eventually. We do have some allowances for non-conforming situation structures to add on to. As an example, let's say your front setback is too close, but you might be able to add on to the rear of your house. So you can do some of those expansions. The idea with this was to allow for those situations where we had a residential use that is now non-conforming, to have some of these small accessory uses so they could have some of those normal things that you would have at a home. So again, just those accessory structures, residential use. This, I think, is the last one that we put in the substantive change, the definition of accessory dwelling unit. So Tricia talked about matching, so we certainly want these definitions to match. What we want to do is simply copy the definition from the accessory dwelling unit section and add that definition into the definition section so that those two will match. So that's really it for the substantive changes. This next one is for family and group childcare out of the home. So the state made some changes that allowed for a few more kids to take care of in a home. So we simply want our numbers to match what is now in state law. The only other change on there, under approving authority, there on page 155, we're just correcting a bad reference. High-intensity manufacturing, we're simply removing a reference that's incorrect. Signs. In the signs section, under prohibited signs, we have some exceptions as when we're talking about billboards. And you look closely, you can see we have the exception listed in each of those paragraphs. So the thought was to help with some clarity, we'll just add that exception at the top of that paragraph, and then we can eliminate that in each of those paragraphs. And then on the next page, we just have a clarification for signs in the right-of-way or on public property that you need to have proper authority to do that. And then there's just some re-lettering as a result. So that is UDO 6. Those are the changes that the Planning Commission has recommended. Unanimous. There really wasn't a lot of discussion. We also did not get any public input.
All right. Great. Thank you, Steve. Questions from council members?
Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Yeah, if we could go back to the Airport Overlay District item, section 39-2.2, under subsection F, talks about exceptions. Point number 4 says the overlay district zone rules do not apply to property with an approved site plan if the site plan and use of the property comply with the underlying zoning district, and if prior to site approval plan, the authority determines in writing that the site plan and use are not inconsistent. In other words, if the authority signs off on it. My first question is, what does it mean when it says, when it refers to the underlying zoning district? Does that mean the zoning designation sans the overlay district? Can you?
So you can see from the map, right, the airport overlay district encompasses quite a few different zoning districts.
Mm-hmm.
So you would still have to comply. So if the airport were to say, yes, you can put in that warehouse project, they would still have to comply with that underlying zoning requirement. So it doesn't necessarily trump it. Their approval just allows it to go through the process, but they're still gonna have to meet whatever underlying zoning district that project may be in.
So both of those conditions would have to be met?
Both of those conditions have to be met.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions for staff? I just want to thank you, Steve, for and everybody in the planning department working on this. I think this is a great example. We joke about, this is the third round, or the 6th round of these, and that 7 is coming. But when you're doing a project this big, I think this is a great example of, oh, here are some little things that we need to clean up. Here are some things that we need to add because we're finding that the uses and the desires within the community have changed a little bit, vendor trucks being that example. And then also areas where we go, you know what, the way we wrote this language, we forgot about a particular issue, or we're finding that the document doesn't work exactly the way that we were anticipating that it was working, and getting those cleaned up. That this is really a great example of a living document, and one that is going to continue to be changing. And I always get this number wrong, 350 pages, something like that. It's an awful lot of work. So anybody who's watching going, how did they possibly miss that? There was a lot that went into this thing, and it's great to see that you guys are being as detail-oriented and, dare I say, nitpicky as you are about going, we need to make sure everything matches all the way along the line to make it the best document for the people as possible. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
What is the pleasure of council in regard to the text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance number 6?
Move to approve the presented changes.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ernst. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin? Yes. Coronado?
Yes.
Ernst?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Bird?
Yes.
Vreeman?
Yes.
Peters? Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Next item 11A, Community Energy Plan Report Update. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So in a moment, we are very happy to welcome Andrew Reynolds here with us. But I also just want to recognize that we have a lot of other visitors with us in the crowd today, including BPW staff led by General Manager Koster, retired staff, hi Ann, members of the BPW board, but also several members that participated with the strategic development team process. And we wanted to make sure, and there's a few of you up here that participated in that also, thank you very much. We wanted to make sure that they were at least invited to this process tonight so that they could hear that this was one of the recommendations that came out of that process. And we made sure that we hit the mark here. And Andrew is going to do a great job, I know, presenting on where we stand on the overall report. And you also have this cool little handout that we're going to be flooding the community with also. So just wanted to give that context. Andrew probably was going to cover a lot of that. But Andrew, welcome. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Keith, and thank you, everyone. My name is Andrew Reynolds. I'm the Community Energy Services Manager with Holland BPW. And in that role, I'm also in charge of facilitating the Community Energy Plan Steering Committee that Keith mentioned. So that's the team that's working to actually make the Community Energy Plan happen. The doers, to borrow a phrase from Quincy. We have a combination of doers and dreamers in the room who helped make this happen. So we wanted to kind of go into tonight not how each of the 20 strategies from the strategic development team are actually going. That would be a great report, but it would take a lot longer than one meeting. So we really want to try and hit the highlights of what progress has been made since last year, because it was about a year ago that the strategic development team gave the recommendations to council and you approved them. Also, just wanted to kind of, going off of the brochure in front of you, you'll notice it's a different shape than the traditional trifold, and that's on purpose. It's because one of the things that the SDT mentioned was that we need to get this word out to the community in other ways, in as many ways as we can, to make it actually hit home with people. So the traditional trifold brochure works. We thought this might be a little bit more eye-catching on a table in City Hall and hopefully on your coffee table at home, which I'm sure it'll live for a long time. But leaning into that global idea too, because obviously anything that we do in Holland is great for Holland, but if we aren't motivating others and working with other communities around the country and the world to help move this effort along as well, then it's not as impactful as it should be. So we're going to lean hard into that global theme tonight. Part one of leaning hard into that theme. So.
Good morning, Dave.
Andrew's really cultivating this PowerPoint presentation expertise.
We're working on it, yeah. So not to give a whole background on the community energy plan, it's 10 years old, or more than 10 years old now, and there's been 10 years worth of work that's gone into making it happen up to this point. But we don't have time to go through all that, so again, we're just gonna kind of go through what's happened in the last year. The best way, I think, to summarize that much background in a short amount of time. And you can read it. The text is actually the same text taken from the brochure, but since I had a screen, I couldn't miss the opportunity. So Keith already set all this up anyway. So we had the CEP 10 years ago. The mayor convened a strategic development team to update that plan, to give us some new strategies to take ahead in the next 3 to 5 years. There we go. All that background in a slide.
Do you have this available that we can share?
Certainly.
Excellent.
Are you supposed to have that much fun with this?
Right.
No, we could,
Right, no, it was actually Jurassic Park theme at our house, but, yeah, beside the point, we can talk about that later. So when we talk about the progress on the CEP, we really talk about one main metric, and that's the emissions per capita or per person in Holland. Now, it's not to say that we've gone to every person's home and we've actually taken an account of what they use. That's to say we've totaled up all the electricity use and gas use in the community, all the vehicle miles traveled by commercial and residential and City of Holland vehicles, and we've divided that by our population. So that's where that number comes from. It was the metric chosen by the original CEP, and we wanted to be consistent with that to really be able to measure progress over time. And we've been making progress over time. That's really the best success story up to this point, is that we've been moving that number lower. It started at 24, and it's been getting lower ever since, due to big projects like Holland Energy Park being built, but also due to a lot of small projects like individual improvements that homeowners and businesses have made in that time. So in the first 10 years of the plan, we've gone from 24 metric tons to 17, when if we had no progress or no plan at all, we would have likely been going up from that point. So it's really a big improvement thanks to the CEP. The original CEP had a goal of taking us all the way to 10 metric tons per person by the year 2050. One of the reasons that the SDT was convened, though, was because it was kind of understood that 2050 is great, but it's too slow. So the SDT was kind of charged with looking if there are ways to get to a lower target or a reasonable target at an earlier date. And so they took that challenge, and their recommendations that they made, all 20 of them, are with the specific intent of getting us to a goal of 12, just over 12 metric tons per capita by 2030, or 20 years sooner. And that's not just a number plucked out of the air. That was all those individual strategies were looked at in terms of what the actual reduction impact would be, and this is where it came out. So there's math behind each one of those, which again, another meeting we can go into those, but just to give context of the goal and how it's changed in the last year. So the SDT took those 20 recommendations and they grouped them into 5 what they called levers. And so that's what make up the back of your brochure, the 5 different levers, the first one being electric portfolio. So this is obviously one that's really in the court of BPW to manage.
Go ahead, Scott. Scott has a question
Yeah.
for you.
Back one slide.
Sure.
Just in your presentation versus what we have before us, it shows the far right an arrow going down showing 12, that 12.25. So is there a projection that that will be below what our goal was?
No, that might have honestly been a rounding to fit it on the brochure.
Oh, okay.
So, but,
Thank you.
good question, though. Thank you for. So again, the first lever being electric portfolio. At this point in time, BPW's portfolio consists of slightly over 15% renewable electricity. And that, along with things like Holland Energy Park that I mentioned before, replacing our coal-fired James D. Young power plant, has helped us reduce the emissions per unit of electricity that we generate here, reduce that by 50% roughly since before the CEP was drafted. So that alone is a huge benefit to the community, because then every time anybody uses electricity, they're emitting less or responsible for emitting less than they did before the CEP was written. The other important piece that goes along with that, it's not just that we have low carbon electricity, but we have low cost electricity. Compared to some of our investor-owned utility neighbors, our residential customers pay roughly 40% less Why is that important? Obviously, cleaner and greener electricity makes sense for the community energy plan, but why does cheaper energy matter? The CEP was not about being sustainable for sustainability or just green for green's sake. It was also about being economically competitive, having affordable and reliable electricity. And so with low rates, we can be competitive as a community. We can be prosperous, and that helps fund and drive all the other efforts that we're trying to do beyond just the electric portfolio. So it's a combination of the low cost and low carbon electricity helps us set up for success in other ways. That kind of leads into a little bit of, I'm just going to throw the term out now, of electrification. If you haven't already heard that term, it's an important one that ties into a lot of the strategies that the SDT came up with. And in a nutshell, electrification is switching from a fossil fuel-based form of energy to an electric-based form of energy for different applications. So the classic examples, an electric vehicle replacing your gas-powered vehicle, or a heat pump replacing maybe a gas furnace in the home. So when you hear electrification, that's what we're talking about, is that switching of fuels for different purposes. The second lever, building energy consumption. Well, the first one was a lot in BPW's court. Building energy consumption is in all of our court because it's the decisions we make in our own homes and our own businesses to actually reduce energy use. One of the best ways that the city encourages that kind of behavior now is BPW's rebate programs. Our energy waste reduction program has been around now for over 10 years. These are the statistics from just the program last year. So for a residential customer who participated, this was about 1,600 customers last year. The average rebate they received was a little over $100, but they also saved about that much on their electric bill for doing that project that they got a rebate for. And obviously those rebate or those savings will continue beyond just year one. Similarly for businesses, the business participants who were roughly 150 last year got rebates averaging $6,700 and saved over $3,000 a year on their business electric bills. We just recently launched at BPW a new class of electrification rebates for residential customers that actually range anywhere from $25 up to $4,000. And if you've been following the news, there's new rebates coming from the federal government thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act that would be in addition to those. So there's some big dollars coming for electrification in the very near future. We expect at BPW to be a big part in those discussions with customers on how to take advantage of that, but there might also be some additional discussions that the CEP team has to go through to kind of figure out if there's ways as a city we can set people up for success with that. Transportation is the third lever, and it's a tough one because seemingly everyone has their own vehicle, and this is a hard one to crack because to switch to an EV right now is an expensive proposition. I've got Elon Musk's Roadster floating through space, obviously tongue-in-cheek, but that's not the solution. And that's the reason why we wanted to devote at least part of this page to reducing the reliance on vehicles altogether. The city just recently, last year, completed a non-motorized transportation plan. And that's really the other big piece of the transportation reduction solution is getting people out of their cars or having them just avoid trips altogether, working from home, doing other things that reduce their vehicle miles, whether they're electric or not. We did see a 100% or a 2 times increase in the EVs that were actually registered in the zip codes, the 49423 zip code last year. We're talking still in the dozens, maybe hundreds of vehicles, not the thousands yet. But a lot of the projections you see right now are that by 2030, that will be a much bigger piece of the sales of vehicles going forward. So we'll be tracking that number closely. Sorry, clicking. There. Whoop, clicking too much. That's good. Thanks, Keith. Education's the fourth lever. This is one that there could have been 15 different things we fit on this little circle. So apologies to all the entities that did a lot of great work this year to advance this lever, but one of the ones we wanted to highlight in particular for the City of Holland residents was this new program that we're calling Home Energy 101. So this is taking our existing home energy retrofit program that in the past gave grants to residents who spent over $10,000 on deep retrofits. We're keeping pieces of that grant program, but requiring this free upfront education program first. So residents go through an in-home visit by one of these 4 nonprofit partners who've been trained on home energy efficiency. And as a benefit of completing that, they get obviously the knowledge of their home they might not have had before, and a nice report that summarizes all the findings, but they also get up to $300 worth of free energy saving materials they can actually put into practice right away. So they don't have to spend any money to participate and to start kind of getting educated and on board with efficiency improvements. I think the timing of this will be great with those new rebates I mentioned from BPW and the federal government, because that's another key piece of the education, is that we're just letting people know those rebates exist and that they're eligible for them, because a lot of people will be. So you could go on Holland Energy Fund today and sign up for that program. We've been taking signups for just over a month now. It was in the city newsletter just this week as well. And the final lever is carbon offsets. I didn't mention it on that graph showing our progress, but you probably noticed that our goal wasn't 0 metric tons per capita. That was because a lot of communities have set that as their goal, a lot of companies have set that as their goal. It's not feasible until you actually look at the strategies available to your community to actually get there, and we wanted to pick a goal that was actually feasible. However, if you want to go farther, and there are ways to do that using carbon offsets and renewable energy certificates, I won't dwell on it today because it's a more complicated solution, but if a lot of the businesses in town, at least the large ones, are being told by their investors, customers, that they need to get to this point of getting to 0 emissions for their business, and the only way you can do that really feasibly right now is with these kind of third-party products like offsets and renewable energy certificates. So that's really buying the rights to electricity that's generated renewably somewhere else. Obviously, things like on-site generation and batteries exist, but they're not usually economically feasible at this point. So those are the 5 levers. We wanted to put something in the brochure about how you can help. Not just, hey, good job, staff, let's keep it going, but how can you individually participate, whether you're a resident or a business? So the main ways that we've identified already are ones I've already talked about: rebate programs that exist, the Home Energy 101 program, even SEMCO rebates. Not everyone's going to be able or need to switch to electrification right away. SEMCO has similar efficiency programs like we do to reduce people's bills for their natural gas use. One different item for businesses that I wanted to highlight is that any of them who are already buying those carbon offsets or renewable energy certificates, I would love if they would let us know, because it helps us account for that in the whole overall community calculation of carbon. You'll notice the latest number was from 2020 on that graph. The next time we'll do that calculation is with the full calendar year 2022 data. So when I come back for next year's annual update, there'll be a new number. And so if we can take those businesses into account, if they're already going out and with their own funds buying offsets, we can reflect their investment in our total number. So finally, what's next? There are some activities on the horizon that we already know about that are going to move this number further. Right now, we're kind of in the midst of transitioning our energy waste reduction rebate program at BPW, increasing our goals, increasing our budget. That's one of the specific recommendations from the SDT, and so we're doing that. We're in the midst of doing that right now. BPW is getting ready to add additional solar to its portfolio, which will drive that renewable number up based on current sales. And finally, there are discussions ongoing to create a carbon fund locally. So again, no time to talk about all the details tonight, but buying carbon offsets is a tricky thing because you're trusting that the program is well run somewhere else and that the money is going to the thing you think it is. We think that'll be easier to do when the offset projects are more close to home. So that's kind of the effort at the very early stages right now that we'll have, I'm sure, an update on by this point next year. So, it's delayed, but I think my last slide is any questions?
Questions from council? Well done. I think that you got everybody fully informed. Thank you guys for the great work on this, and thank you also for coming back and following through on the updates so that we're able to continue to track this. And I love the education piece on this. You actually had me looking up the cost of an electric heat pump for my house. So great. That opportunity. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, just a quick question. On your progress, you noted that we're at 17. Is that where you anticipated being at this point?
I don't think we really forecasted it before it happened. For things like Holland Energy Park, we could do that estimate ahead of time, but on some of the other things like individual participation, it was hard to know. We were certainly trying different ways of getting the word out, but we haven't projected it yet. I think it's probably worth noting that we don't just expect to keep on coasting down to 10 on the current trajectory, because a lot of the, it's an overused term, but the low-hanging fruit is gone. A lot of the LEDs have been changed out, or the lighting has been changed out in a lot of the businesses around. So you need to be starting to think more creatively or spend more significantly to make the same type of impact that some of the easier projects early on did. We can't build Holland Energy Park twice and keep going down. Those kind of things. So it's going to be tough to keep that number going down. But we'll see where it is in 2022.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Corbin?
Where can people get more of these? Are you gonna have them in places
Yeah,
throughout the community?
right now our plan is to at least certainly put them here at City Hall, and we'll also put them into the folders that residents get when they do Home Energy 101. But then we'll just continue to find new places to put them. It'll be in a digital version as well on the website. But yeah, thank you. We'll keep looking for ways to get them out there.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Ernst-Horst, and then Belinda.
Okay. Thank you. And I think education is the ticket, the key to everything. So how do we get the word out? I listened to a podcast, Marianne Manderfield interviewing Dan Boersma on a lot of things. You've had little videos on the Holland website, which is great. Does everybody see those? Does everybody see these? You know, this is where, I mean, I'll tell my friends because they're not seeing it. So we all have to tell people and get this out because we have to, it does come down to all of us. I agree, and I appreciate you doing this. I did have a question and I've forgotten it, but this getting the word out is the absolute ticket. And maybe with electrification, with the transportation, we'll eventually get some of those chargers out so that tourists, these people coming to visit us, will know they can charge up their cars.
Yeah,
So.
and I think there's lots of, again, the education page could have been its own brochure.
Yes.
I do want to acknowledge Travis and ODC's work, obviously supporting the city's education efforts, running a lot of their own efforts, and obviously expanding the school education programs that they're doing. There's all kinds of things that are going
That's
on that are
amazing.
increasing the education from all different angles.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all helping, but
And
we're going to
it's-
keep looking for more ways.
We hope it's everywhere. Thank you. This is a great effort.
Yeah. Ms. Coronado.
Thank you. Thanks for the information. So question, I see it says enroll in Holland's BPW's elective renewable energy rate. What's the capacity for that? And do you have, the capacity for every resident in Holland? And
For residential, I don't want to overpromise. No limit at the moment for residential.
Okay.
Certain customers in town, if they elected that, we would have to have a couple of meetings to figure exactly how to do that, perhaps. But for residential customers, there's the capacity to add as many residential customers as can sign up right now.
Oh, okay. So do you have, the significant number of residents signed up, or?
Yeah, and again,
where
we're
is
still
your-
talking in the probably hundreds of residential customers. But honestly, that program wasn't highly promoted before the last couple of years. So it's a way, if you're switching all of the things in your home to electricity and you really want to get to truly a net zero home, that's a much more affordable way to do it than putting solar panels on your roof at this point in time.
Okay.
And so I think when people start looking at electrification more closely, they'll look at that as an option to get there if they want to.
Because, I mean, me personally, I have did the retrofit, and
Yeah.
then I got the rate, and it says, you're using more than somebody of the similar, and I'm just like, what's going on here? So we're gonna have to talk.
We can.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's actually a big education piece, though, because if people don't, and I'm not saying this is the case for your home, but if someone takes their gas furnace out and puts an electric heat pump in, their electric bill is going to go way up. But they need to compare that to their gas bill, and we need to know ahead of time how big an estimated impact on their budget that will be. And we don't want to incentivize it if it's going to make them have to pay more in a net amount over the year. So it's a tricky balance. Education.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, just, I have elected for the renewable rate for both my home and my office, and didn't notice a difference at all in
You won't.
the amount of the bill. It was negligible. So thank you guys for that. And I drive an electric vehicle, and while that has gone up, and actually I got a call from my electrician saying, do you know that you're using, X amount more electricity than your neighbor is? And I said, yeah, that's because I drove my car 200 miles the day before. And I said, but I only paid 3 cents a mile to drive. I didn't have to pay the high gas prices that my neighbor's paying to put in his vehicle. So there are trade-offs with that. I have a higher electric bill because of the electric vehicle, but it's much less than what I was paying for gasoline prior to that. So, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next item on the agenda is the item that was pulled from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. That's item 12E 4.2, annual adjustments to interest rates for certain special assessments. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Quincy, for giving me a heads up. I think this was just a kind of let people know situation. Lynn's here to give a more detailed information if anyone would like it. What's the basis of what's going on here? You'll hear Ron, and by extension myself or Dave, periodically remind that there is this fundamental law that we can't lend the faith and credit of the city for private purposes. And when you do a special assessment, kind of the basis of that is you're doing a special assessment because someone's getting a targeted private benefit for something, and they're paying that cost or a portion of that cost. And the special assessment is usually always a choice of someone can pay that rate all the way up front, or they really can finance that over a period of time. And councils prior to you and councils that that were here before I was here too, set this policy in place that basically said, how do we periodically review and take a look at what is the rate that really almost us serving as a bank are charging for those special assessments. And we're all aware that interest rates have been going up, so the policy then that we follow, because prior councils set that, basically is the calculation that the finance department then ran and is in front of you tonight, that would then assess that new rate for those special assessments. And there's not tons of them out there, right? But they're like old street projects or the like. So that is what this project is before you, and it's really just implementing the policy that those in chairs probably before you put in place at one point.
Thank you. Questions? No? All right. We need to do a vote on this, and so we need a motion in regard to the annual adjustments for the interest rates for certain special assessments. What's the pleasure of council?
Move that we approve the finance report on annual adjustment of interest rates for certain special assessments.
Moved by Aaronshorst. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado. Any discussion?
Yes. one
Yes,
comment.
Mr. Byrd.
I was the one who pulled it off. I just wanted to, and I shared this with Keith, when we see an increase, I think it's just that transparency piece to let everyone know what's going on and why we're doing this. So that was the gist of it, really.
Great way to keep our residents informed. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Yep. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Coronado,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next item on our agenda, 12E 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please review the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the following gifts. Public Safety Services, Heights of Hope. Donations collected from the 2022 Battle of the Badges charity softball game held September 2022 in the amount of $8,207. Black River Recycling and Supply, $100. The Insurance Group, $500. Central Park Grocery, $100. Code Blue, $500. Power Manufacturing, $500. Simcoe Energy, $1,000. Michigan Wood Fuels, $100. Holland Equipment Services, $200. Request Foods, $250. Performance Plus Quick Lube, $500. TNT Roofing, $500. Bradford Company, $250. Reliable Road Service, $500. Fortress Stabilization Systems, $1,000. Lighthouse Group, $100. And various others, $2,107. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Great, thank you, Kathy. What is the pleasure of council in regard to the gifts?
Move to approve said gifts with a token of our appreciation.
Moved by Coronado, is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, 12E 6.2, approval of the restated agreement to establish an Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So one of the roles that I'm honored to serve because of being city manager is that I serve on behalf of all of you and our residents on the Central Dispatch Authority. And actually right now, Chief Messer serves as the chair of the technical board and I serve as the chair of the policy board. And one of the things that we identified as something that we wanted to work towards doing is having a restated agreement. And that original authority was established with the entities that are described in here, Ottawa County, City of Holland, and the City of Grand Haven. And why those three? Because at one point, prior to what we have in place, we all separately had dispatch centers where basically people would call 911 and we'd have a little office and we'd have people that take those calls and dispatch. And as you might suspect, it was dreamed at that point and executed that that's not the most efficient, effective way to do it. So we were able really to be one of the first counties that established a central dispatch authority countywide. So why did we think a restated agreement made sense? Because City of Holland, being the leaders in so many things, this probably isn't such a great thing, it's just the truth. We are split between two counties. So the reality is the authority that it's set up right now for residents in the City of Holland and members of the authority, if you're in Ottawa County, you pay a millage. But if you're in the portion of Allegan County that's in the City of Holland, you actually pay a surcharge on your cell phone bills, which always gets interesting and it's changing, and we've done some work to make sure that that exchange works right. But it really was identified that that just frankly doesn't make a lot of sense. And since the initial authority was established, I believe there was a state law changed, which actually allows us, which is being recommended here and outlined in the resolution, which allows us with the entities that creating the authority in the first place can restate that authority. That sets us up that when the millage would be asked to be renewed, cliffhanger here, at some point we're going to ask that millage to be renewed, that it would actually set the basis that those City of Holland residents that are in Allegan County could actually switch. They won't continue to pay the surcharge, but they would just be like all the other people in Ottawa County that get the services from the Central Dispatch Authority and participate that by paying the millage. So in effect, long story short, that's what this does. And it would require your approval and the other entities that I mentioned. And really, it just sets the stage so that when that millage renewal question would come up, that everyone that benefits from the work of the authority would basically be paying into it using the same fashion.
Questions from council? Mr. Freeman.
Keith, what happens, I'm assuming Ottawa County passes it and Allegan doesn't. What happens?
Actually, it doesn't work that way. Once this would go through, then basically it's everybody in. So in effect, all of Allegan County doesn't vote on it. It would be, I'm going to use a bad example, kind of like the ISD, where there's other entities that don't have the same boundaries as we do. This would be an example where voters in Holland that are in Allegan County would just be aggregated with all the other votes in Ottawa County, and it's just one total vote up or down.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Corbin.
Yeah, Keith, you can clarify, but I think a lot of the problem stemmed from how to identify the number of users, cell phone users, that surcharge would be applied to regarding the citizens in the city of Holland. So there was a lot of debate on how to extract those funds appropriately from Allegan County to apply it to the central authority here. And so this helps clean it up, I think.
Absolutely agree.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from council members? Yeah, no. The only comment I think I'm going to make, and I want to make sure we're clear on this, what this would do would be set it up so that all of the users within the city of Holland are paying the same rate in the same way for the same service. Okay. What's the pleasure of council in regard to the approval of the restated agreement to establish an Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority?
Move to approve the restated establishment of that agreement.
Support.
Moved by Vreeman, support by Byrd. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnsworst?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Coronado?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda, item Lucky 13, communications from the city manager.
Surprise, I'm just going to pass tonight.
What?
All right, item number 14, appointments and communications from the mayor, excuse me. And I'm just going to knock and pass as well. Item number 15, appointments, motions, communications from council members. Ms. Ernst-Horst.
Yes, and I will repeat what I said a couple weeks ago. I have an election next week, Tuesday, November 8th. You all know that. But I have a couple points to mention, one of which is the polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And this Saturday, November 5, the city clerk's office is open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., I believe, for registration, voter registration, and to pick up ballots. The Secretary of State is recommending that if you still have your absentee ballot, to bring it in to City Hall because the mail, it's a big envelope. And do you recommend that? Would you say that would be true?
I would recommend it
Yeah.
at this point. Use our drop boxes.
Yes, and so it's important to vote. We have all the state offices, all the way down to county commissioners. There are 3 proposals, none of which are confusing, so it's all very safe and secure. Our clerks, both at the county level, the city level, and the township level, are going the extra mile, to coin a phrase, to make everything safe and secure and free from fraud. So please vote. And along with voting, I would say let's be kind to the people who are volunteering at the polls. They are trained to make this safe and secure, and just let's all be polite and thank them actually for their civic duties. And that's all I have to say. Just vote.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Coronado?
Just gonna say, I concur, encourage you to vote. Your voice is your vote, and your vote is your voice. And, we make a big difference here at the local level, so encourage your friends, family, and, be helpful. And thank you, Nikki, for that great reminder.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, there is just one motion I would entertain at this point.
Move to adjourn?
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support? Support by Peters. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.